Okay, so I'm here to talk about the process of buying technology because it's something I had to do. My background is in brand marketing, and what I've noticed in the time that I've been doing this is that there's a whole new set of technology that helps us make these decisions, whether it's our email marketing and push or the analytics tools that we're using. And we're very often outmatched when it comes to buying these tools. We're working with salespeople who are very familiar with the technology and the pricing, and we're not. It's actually why I started consulting on this. After going through this, I compare it very often to a large project, maybe redoing a house, where you get to the end of it and you would do it very differently if you could go back and do it over again. So that's what I consult on. And part of that starts with the actual selection of the tools. So at my agency, we've created this worksheet, and it has a couple of goals. Make sure I do the clicker right. So when performing a vendor evaluation, we have the following 4 goals. One, we like to reach internal consensus, and we like to do that at the very beginning of the process. It's very difficult to buy a solution if everybody's not aligned on what the problem is. The second thing, or the next step, is to focus on the requirements. So now that your team in your organization has reached consensus, what are the requirements that this tool needs to solve? So if anybody in this room has had to buy technology before, part of what makes it really complicated is not just, let's say, comparing CRMs to CRMs, but some of them do email and also have analytics. Do you want a tool that specifically does the messaging and a separate one for the analytics? So it's really important to get clear on what are the requirements that are going to have the greatest impact on your business objectives so that you can prioritize what it is that you need to solve. The other thing that I faced myself and that we see a lot is analysis paralysis. Everybody who's not in this room right now is here to sell things, as has been alluded to in other presentations. And so with all of their great sales materials can come a lot of questions about, am I doing this correctly, and what do I really need? And evaluation on tools is something that can really stretch on when the biggest or most impactful part of this whole process is actually integrating the tool. So to spend too much time in the buying is wasteful. And then the last piece is, like any big decision, and purchasing technology is a big, expensive decision. You want to be able to feel confident in your decision. So the first thing that I talked about was aligning an internal consensus. So when you're buying marketing, product, technology, you've usually got a bunch of different stakeholders, and a lot of these people are represented at this conference and others. And the challenge is, how can we reach consensus among these players? So what I'll sometimes see when people are putting together an RFP is they'll interview these various departments. And if your RFP has different sections by teams, what can wind up happening is it can actually pit the different teams against one another. So one tool performs best with the marketing team, and that's at odds with the team that scores best for engineers. But ultimately, if you reach that internal consensus first, so an example will be you're curious about the actual dashboard of the tool, right? That's not something that's specific to marketers or to engineers. If you're looking at it now needs to integrate with your data solutions, that's something that the data engineer should be weighing in on. But this is the kind of negotiation that, although difficult at times, has to happen before you go out and approach vendors about the tool solving your problems. So you have to have any of those difficult conversations internally first before somebody else can come in and provide you with an answer as to what's going to help you achieve your goals. The next thing that I talked about on that list was focusing around requirements. And I think something that we have in the worksheet is this idea of what is the aha moment that brought you to the decision that you wanted to buy a tool to help you solve this problem. And the reason that I think it's important to consider that aha moment is I use an analogy. Recently, I was buying an air conditioner. And as soon as you get in the store and you're doing your research about all the different air conditioners out there, you get this requirement creep. And now there's a air conditioner that can connect to my phone and I can turn it on before I come home. Well, I live in New York City in a studio apartment, and so that's not really important to why I'm buying this air conditioner. But once I start doing this feature matrix, suddenly it becomes more about which air conditioners do more. I bring this up to say when you're looking for a tool, it's not there's not one tool that's best. And so like putting together a feature matrix is going to allow you to figure out this one attribution tool is the best. And so if you bloat your requirements with things that are not crucial to what it is that you're looking to solve, that's where this process gets really bloated and you get that analysis paralysis. So here's an example of a stakeholder who's saying, I'm buying a tool because we want advanced messaging and campaign orchestration to support our upcoming product launch and engagement strategy. Now, when this person is doing research around what tools are out there to help them, of course, it's going to be the responsible thing to find out what CRM tools offer. But at the end of the day, when they're prioritizing the requirements, it's really important to remember that what brought them in the door in the first place was messaging and campaign orchestration, and allow that to keep the search really focused. I think it's also a great thing to bring up some inhibitors that you as an organization have, because when we get to the part where you're actually asking vendors out there to help you understand how their solution is going to work for you, these kind of things that are specific to your organization are going to help them highlight the parts of their tool that are going to help solve the problems best. Something that we very often see if somebody's putting together a pretty generic RFP is that the answer from every salesperson is yes, 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 yes. Do you do this? Yes, yes, yes. So you want to ask, this is my specific use case. How is your tool going to help me to do that? And another thing that's really important when you're looking at some of these specific cases is to also ask, and how much does your tool, like what are the pricing structures? Because the other thing about the yes, 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 yes is like, yes, we do these, but it might be extra. It might require additional integration support. It might require support that you don't have internally. So here's an example of somebody saying that they're also looking for a CRM, right? But they have limited engineering resources. It's really great to bubble this up in the beginning so that when you're figuring out which of these tools is going to be best, instead of getting those yes answers, you find out that in order to support the kind of mapping and testing that you're looking to do, additional engineering resources are required. A lot of people who I've spoken to and interviewed in order to put together this worksheet will say that there were all of these either additional costs or integration requirements that came up after the contract was signed. And what I also find is that if you have a sense going into the contract negotiation, like a lot of people that I've interviewed have said, they know they need a tool, they do this RFP, they decide on one, they sign the contract and negotiate, and then following that, they start thinking through the different ways that they're going to use it. But if you do that kind of planning in advance of the contract negotiation, you're actually in a much better position to negotiate with the salesperson for the things that matter most. So if you know you're going to want to be sending out a lot of emails, you can negotiate part of the pricing to include that. In the case of paid media, often raw data exports can be extra. So if you know that's something that you're going to need versus not need, now you go into the negotiation with a lot of different levers to pull. Okay, so this is what the typical process looks like based on the interviews that I've conducted and my own experience, which is you have that aha moment, you come to an event like this, you see a great presentation about paid media, you see a great presentation about AI, you go back to the office and you say, we need this tool. But then it turns into this world's largest RFP process where you start asking around, which usually consists of asking Google, and you create this really exhaustive list. And the list is not unique to you. It doesn't have a sense of prioritization, like which of these asks is most important. And the other issue is that the RFP is a very one-sided experience. And I hope you'll pardon the analogy, but when I was speaking to somebody at one of the tools that is typically receives the RFPs, it's like creating a dating profile where everything is about what you're looking for and nothing about what you bring to the table, right? So when you're looking for, when you're purchasing a tool, it's just as much about what that tool brings to your organization, but also what's unique to your organization. And so the more that you can provide salespeople with a sense of what's unique to your business, the better they can cater a solution that's going to work for you. So some examples include somebody that we just work with. They have a two-sided marketplace. So when it comes to doing paid media attribution, it's going to be really important that they're able to understand which side of the business. So if we're talking about, I think Uber was referenced in the last presentation, right? There's going to be some intricacies to attribution when you've got some people who are installing, in Uber's case, they have two different apps, but some apps have both of the sides installing. And so you'll want to understand once they create the account, what type of user to attribute them back to. So that's something really important to provide the attribution providers context to. So again, they can talk to you about the specifics of what's going to be involved, not just in choosing a tool, but ultimately integrating and using it. And so a better way of doing this is you start with that aha moment and you use that to align internally and put together your top requirements. And this is going to be a somewhat iterative approach. And most of us, when we're buying a tool, either it's our first time buying that tool, or in my case, I've purchased tools, but there have been, even if there's a year in between, let's say you're at two different organizations, things change so quickly that something with tracking that wasn't possible last year is this year, right? So by first aligning on your goals and your requirements, you then come to that RFP process saying, this is what I need. What can you do for me? Maybe going back to the table based on what your the different vendors that you're speaking with say. Maybe you then narrow it down to two, and then again, you identify those key differences between them, and then you can buy with confidence. And truly, this is something that with our clients, we achieve, I time box it in 2 weeks, but my experience of buying software and from talking to a lot of companies is that it's very typical that this process takes 6 months. And often it's because those of us who are tasked with buying the tools have a day job that we're dealing with. So this is something that's in excess. And the irony about it is that we're buying a tool to help make our lives a little easier, but the process of buying is a big distraction. So with the worksheet that I'm going to show, there's no reason this can't take place in 2 weeks. Okay, so and this is something that I'm very happy to send out. So I'll share my information at the end of this presentation if you actually want to go through the worksheet. But we actually go through this exercise with our clients, and we do so by starting with the business objective and even putting together some descriptions. Now, some of this stuff sounds silly when I'm talking through it, or maybe very basic, but another lesson that I've learned is that when people are making, honestly, a lot of this stuff goes for a lot of big decisions in an organization. It doesn't just have to be about buying technology. there's not one solution that's the best, but rather the solution that's best for the team in that moment due to those circumstances. So also putting down some descriptions and some notes around why decisions were made, what the context is the kind of thing that 1 year later, when ultimately somebody on the team has left or the team has grown, really helps everybody moving forward understand why decisions were made and allows you to grow. And while we're talking about this, when I reference the actual integration of the technology, the data taxonomy and how you actually integrate is so essential to people being able to get value out of the tools that they purchase. And I've worked with clients where they have thought that an event in a tool, let's say, I was working with a streaming partner, and it was stopped video, and they had told us that that meant that somebody clicked the stop button, and so we were running a bunch of campaigns against that. And in reality, stopped video was that the video reached 90% of the, like, it was an analogy for, like, we can assume this person completed watching this piece of content. So there's, running 6 months of campaigns on an error. It happens very often because a lot of the stuff is not documented as it's happening. And we then write down these requirements and prioritize them and categorize them. And then use this scoring system along with ways of plotting in by vendors how they rate for these. And as I sort of was referencing earlier, it allows you to come up with this recommendation for a tool that best matches the specific goals and those goals as they align to the objectives in your organization, so that you avoid having what can be this, like, here's the tool that does the most number of things sort of okay versus the tool that does the things that I need it to do best. And great that it does these things really well that align to my business objective 5, but I'm going to prioritize those that are aligning to business objective 1 and 2. And I'm going to do so in cooperation with the other stakeholders in my organization. And I'm now going to have documented the goals so that this becomes the jumping off point for which you'll write the integration requirements, versus a standard RFP has a lot of information about the tools that you ultimately don't wind up choosing. So all the time that you're spending in that discovery and RFP process is totally disposable and has no use moving forward, versus the end of this process is the beginning of the integration requirements. So this is from my agency, Notable. We're all former marketers ourselves. I shouldn't say former, we're still marketing today, but we all are buyers, and we think that that's part of what makes us notable. And we're here to help build growth systems that not only enhance the customer experience, but as you've seen me reference on the past few slides, really deliver business impact. It's something that we think separates us from other people out there that are working in growth. The important step after buying either tools or media is being able to illustrate a return on your investment. And so we specialize in helping our clients do that. I'll be happy to share this presentation with anybody after who would actually like to use the worksheet. And I know there's a pretty intimate group of us in this room. So if anybody has questions or is going through this buying process themselves right now, I'm happy to chat about that, and we can do so sort of casually. Great.
Rebecca.
Thank you.